Imagine a man, a ruler so powerful, so obsessed with eternity, that his name was carved into every corner of his kingdom. He lived for 9 decades and built wonders that defied time itself. But here is the truly unbelievable part. Imagine a man who, 3,200 years after his death, was legally required to carry a passport, and who traveled to Paris, France, where he was given a full military welcome as a reigning head of state. This is not a fairy tale. This is the story of a great legend who once ruled Egypt, Ramesses II, the pharaoh who never died. He was not just a king. He was a god made of flesh and stone, and his desperate quest for immortality created a secret that the modern world is still trying to understand. Our story begins over 3,000 years ago, in a time when Egypt was rebuilding its legacy. The pharaoh who came before Ramesses, his father Seti I, knew that to keep the throne, they needed a king who would last forever. So, when the young prince was born, he was not just raised as a boy, he was forged as a weapon against time. By the time Ramesses was just 14 years old, he was already a co-regent. Imagine a teenager leading entire regiments of chariots and archers into battle. He wasn't playing with toys, he was managing an empire. His training was relentless. He mastered history, military strategy, and, most importantly, the art of propaganda. He learned that power wasn't just about winning battles. It was about convincing the people, and the gods, that he was unstoppable. He was taught the core belief of his rule. The greatest conqueror is the one who conquers death itself. When he finally took the throne, his first test was the famous Battle of Kadesh. The enemy, the mighty Hittites, tricked Ramesses. They led him into a deadly trap. His army was scattered, his men were in a panic, and Ramesses was almost isolated, standing alone with his personal guard. The Hittite chariots crashed into his camp like a wave. But Ramesses refused to run. He harnessed a fury so immense, he later claimed it was the god Ammonius himself riding with him. He fought his way through the chaos, turning a crushing defeat into a legendary survival. He returned home not to admit a stalemate, but to declare an unparalleled victory. He carved his heroics onto every temple wall. He built an entire new capital city, Pyramus, a name that meant, quite literally, the house of Ramesses. He understood that stone was the key to forever. His true obsession was the conquest of time. He didn't just build monuments. He carved his name into the very landscape of Egypt. Look at Abu Simbel. He didn't build a temple for the god Ra. He carved 4 massive statues of himself right into the mountainside, sitting alongside Ra. He was declaring to the world, I am not just a son of the gods. I am one of them. He even went to the monuments built by kings who came long before him, and he had his own name carved over theirs. His message was clear, their history is over. Only Ramesses is eternal. He ruled for an astonishing 66 years. He outlived most of his generals, his wives, and over 100 of his own children. He became a living contradiction, a man who felt like forever. But deep within the palace walls, even Ramesses had to face the one enemy he could not conquer, his own body.
Ramesses the Great, the God King, the master of time, eventually came face to face with the one enemy he could not conquer, his own body. Longevity, which had been his greatest achievement, became his personal torture. He saw the faces of his most beloved fade. His great royal wife, Nefertari, was gone. The sons he had groomed for kingship, the first, the second, the third, they too were gone, buried in the largest tomb in the Valley of the Kings, long before their father. He had conquered the Hittites. He had conquered stone. But the tiny, unseen enemy of mortality was winning. And Ramesses knew that his final breath would mean more than just the end of a life. It would mean the potential collapse of his entire eternal legacy. He could not accept that the most powerful man who ever lived would simply become dust, like the commoners he ruled. So, Ramesses II turned away from the grand temples he had already built and began a secret quest. He no longer sought the traditional afterlife, known to Egyptians as the Duat. He sought something far older, far more dangerous. He sought the knowledge to cheat the cycle of the sun itself. In the complex beliefs of ancient Egypt, a person was not a single being, but a collection of souls. The Ba was the soul that could fly, taking the form of a bird to visit the land of the living. The Akh was the enlightened, transfigured spirit that ascended to the stars. But the most vital part was the Ka. The Ka was the life force, the spiritual double that sustained the physical body. It was usually left in the tomb to be nourished by offerings. Ramesses did not want his Ka to stay in the tomb to be nourished. He wanted it to be anchored. He wanted it to be bound, like a chain of gold, to his physical mummy and to the land of Egypt forever. He believed that if his Ka remained on earth, fully intact and fully charged, then Ramesses II would never truly cease to exist. He gathered his highest priests, not the ones in the main temple, but the secret keepers, the masters of the forbidden rites. Their mission was to devise a perfect sacred anchor. Ramesses commanded the creation of a unique amulet of eternal anchorage, a piece forged from metal found only in the deepest Nubian mines, said to hold the energy of the earth's core. This amulet was not for the afterlife journey. It was for the sealing. In the days leading up to his final moment, the aging pharaoh performed his last, great deception. He allowed his massive, official tomb, KV7, to be prepared with the usual opulent wealth. But he ensured the true focal point of his immortality was elsewhere. He arranged for a secret passage, one known only to his most trusted few, to be sealed after his death. This passage led not to a chamber of treasure, but to a small, hidden space where the amulet would be placed right on his chest, and his Ka would be bound with a final, unique incantation, delivered at the exact moment the sun god, Ra, set for the very last time on his physical life. This was not a burial, it was a sealing. The king was not being sent away. He was being secured at home. Ramesses II finally passed away in 1213 BC, having reigned for 66 years. The great ritual was performed. The king's body, wrapped in linen and prepared with the sacred, Ka-anchoring resin, was taken to his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. But a body sealed to the earth is never truly at peace. The moment the great stone door slammed shut on his tomb, the trouble began. The kingdom Ramesses had built soon fell into chaos. The riches he had gathered attracted the one menace even a god king could not fight: tomb robbers. They were relentless. They broke into the tomb, desperate to tear the gold from his burial chamber. The priests, those few who knew the secret of the Ka amulet, panicked. They knew they could not allow the pharaoh's body to be desecrated or, worse, moved by profane hands. The Ka would be broken, and the land of Egypt would lose its anchor. So they began one of the most desperate and bizarre rescue operations in ancient history. The high priest snuck into the tomb, lifted the body of Ramesses II, and began to move him in secret. They carried him across the rugged, dusty landscape in the dead of night, hiding him in the tombs of lesser royals and even queens. And the priests did something extraordinary. They wrote notes directly onto the pharaoh's linen bandages. They recorded every stop, every move, every secret hiding place, documenting their desperate mission to save the undying king. For over 200 years, Ramesses II's body was a restless traveler, spending sometimes only 3 days in a single tomb before being moved again to escape the sound of a robber's shovel.
Finally, around 1070 BCE, the priests gathered dozens of royal mummies, including Ramesses II, his father Seti I, and several other great kings, and hid them all together in a massive, secret cave carved high into the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari. This was the royal cache, a hidden, geological tomb where the pharaohs could finally rest, unseen by men. And there, deep in the shadows, Ramesses II lay preserved, his Ka still bound to the earth, for almost 3,000 years. Then came the year 1881. A local family, who had found the secret cache, began selling artifacts to tourists. Eventually, word reached the Egyptian authorities, and they discovered the single greatest collection of royal mummies ever found. Ramesses II was brought out of the shadows, and the modern world finally looked upon the face of the pharaoh who tried to become a god. But his journey was not over. His greatest, most unbelievable voyage was still ahead of him. For nearly a century after his discovery, Ramesses II lay within the Cairo Museum, a symbol of Egypt's glorious past. His face, though ancient, still carried an air of sovereign majesty, the powerful cheekbones and strong jaw confirming the king he once was. But the mummy of the great pharaoh, which had survived 3 millennia of tomb robbers, was now threatened by a silent, invisible enemy, a deadly fungal infection. By the 1970s, the fungus was rapidly eating through the king's preserved flesh. If nothing was done, the body that was meant to anchor the soul of Ramesses II to the land would simply crumble to dust. The modern Egyptian government, recognizing the gravity of the threat, decided there was only one solution. The king needed to travel again, to seek the world's most advanced conservation experts in Paris, France. This decision immediately created a problem that was simultaneously unbelievable and absurd. French law, designed for the modern world, required that any person, living or dead, who entered the country had to carry a valid identification document. Even the mightiest pharaoh of the ancient world could not transcend modern bureaucracy. And so, the Egyptian government performed the final, official act of reverence for the man who refused to die. They formally issued a modern Egyptian passport for the 3,200-year-old Ramesses II. The document bore a specially prepared photograph of the pharaoh's face. For his occupation, the government officially listed King Deceased. Ramesses II became the only mummy in history to possess a legal travel document, an official recognition that, despite all the years, he was still considered a person of status, a head of state who happened to be, well, deceased. In September 1976, the final, bizarre chapter of his quest for immortality unfolded. The king's mummy was carefully placed in a custom-built, shock-proof, cedarwood coffin. The plane carrying him was a military propeller plane, and the pilot was instructed to fly at a low altitude as they left Egyptian airspace. This was done so that Ramesses II, the man who had built Egypt, could have one final, vast look at the entire kingdom that he had ruled for 66 years. When the plane crossed into French airspace, it was immediately escorted by 2 military jets. Upon landing at Paris, Le Bourget Airport, the ancient pharaoh was not met by archaeologists or museum staff alone. He was received with the full military honors befitting a foreign head of state. A military guard stood at attention and saluted the coffin. A French government minister stood on the tarmac and famously pronounced, "France salutes the mortal remains of one of the greatest kings of all antiquity." For the 3,000 years that had passed, Ramesses II had declared himself a god on earth. In 1976, the modern world, through its own laws and military customs, formally agreed. He was taken to the Musée d'Orsay, treated for the fungal infection that threatened his anchor, and after months of meticulous work, he was safely flown back home to the Cairo Museum. Ramesses II did not achieve the perfect, traditional spiritual ascent to the stars, but he achieved something far stranger and more compelling. He built his name into stone, and the stone survived. He anchored his soul to his body, and the body survived. He conquered time, chaos, and even the bureaucracy of the modern world. Long before the world knew the myths of vampires or eternal conquerors, Africa already knew his name. He was Ramesses II, the pharaoh who never died.